ton of other educational experiences, but I learned more from these people saying just the right thing at just the right time in just the right way. I carry it with me today. They have influenced how I feel about things. You need to harvest those feelings for yourself and find a way to embed them in your leadership approach. Now I'm going to go to the fourth thought, and then I'll take you through a quick tour of Campbell. Life is too complex and too dynamic. There's too much change going on, and it's only going to get worse. You cannot create a playbook to manage this. You can't. You need to create rules and processes, but you know you'll always be playing catch-up. As a leader, you have to create a culture that can be engaged in this work and help you evolve. I would assert that the ultimate lever for improving organizational performance is focusing on creating a culture that engages people in an advantaged way. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So now we go to this beautiful build, and I'll close on a little Campbell story and then one final one. Campbell, I shared with you our story. Very difficult circumstances in that company. When I went for my first job, it was interesting. They recruited me at the Four Seasons in Philadelphia. I never got to the facility because they didn't want me, because I was from outside of the company. They didn't want me wandering around their company. The first day of work, a limousine picks me up to take me to work at the Four Seasons, and I look at it and I say, "We're not going to the prison in Camden." He said, "No, sir, that's Campbell Soup Company." Our company, in a dangerous area, was surrounded by razor wire with guard stations and turrets that ostensibly were creating an environment where people felt safe once you got inside, but it was a daunting, scary, challenging place. We were highly troubled in 2000. Over the decade, we became a wonderful success story. There were three governing themes that I would share with you. Oh, I missed this one, Brad. Sorry about that. The first one I've already talked about: be tough-minded on standards and tender-hearted with people. We had that as a theme running through everything we did. Standards are high, but we also held ourselves accountable to being a caring culture. It was all about the culture. It wasn't necessarily about individuals. And we endeavored wherever we could to make it personal while we adhered to the highest possible standards of performance. We created a Campbell Promise the first day of work. When I got there, I said, "We can't expect you to value our agenda as a company until we tangibly demonstrate that we value your agenda as a person." In my experience, it doesn't work any other way. Ultimately, a team of people said, "Well, that's going to become the Campbell Promise." So some employees crafted that, recommended it, and that became our mantra. We're going to value you, and we're going to trust that in the fullness of time, you're going to value our agenda in an advantaged way. We created a success model because I do believe you can't manage it if you can't measure it. And we said, well, what does this all mean? It means we have to win in the workplace before we can win in the marketplace. And that isn't good enough, because we also have a higher calling and we want to win with the community. And in our case, we were a very troubled company in a lot of litigation, and we had to declare that we were going to win with integrity. We were going to slog through all the litigation. That was our success model. We measured each one. This is where you had to be tough-minded. We had this mantra. Well, in the next 3 years, we changed out 300 of the top 350 leaders. 6 out of 7. How about your organization? How would that go? Not easy. How long do you have as a leader to get the team right? How much time do you have? I'll tell you, as a CEO, you have 3 years, maybe. The first year, it's the other guy's fault. The second year, it's our fault. We're learning. The third year, it's your fault. You have 3 years to get this right. And we had declared that we were going to win in the workplace before we won in the marketplace. We created a whole bunch of measures around this. We talked about it. And we said, look, either get with the game, or we're going to help you find another job where you can work within the company or outside the company, but we're getting on with this. We have great intentionality here. So we were very tough-minded. And the people we let go, we tracked them, and we made sure each one of them found new employment if they didn't retire. So we did it in a caring way. I didn't want anybody that was let go dealt with the way I was let go. We weren't perfect, but we did it well. But we still turned over 300 of the top 350. We promoted 150 from within, so that was good. But we had to go out and hire another 150. Now, we measured employee engagement. Interestingly, you know employee engagement ratios. I'll do a quick definition. The bottom left, 2 to 1, that's that you have 2 people engaged in the work for every 1 that's not. So if we had 20,000 people, we had 13,000 people engaged, and we had 6,000 people, 7,000 people who were looking for another job. That's basically what that says. Gallup, who's done more work in this than anybody on the planet, would say if you want to be world class, you have to get to 12 to 1, which is 12 people engaged for every 1 person who's not. Think of a work team. If you have a work team that's doing 13 people and 12 of you are really into it, it really doesn't matter what the 13th one does, right? You've got some critical mass there. Well, while we were making all those tough calls and everything, our engagement started to go up anyway because we let go a lot of people, 300 people, but we had another 19,700 who were sitting there saying, when are you going to make a decision on these people? You know, they knew we had to make changes. They were just waiting to see if we would do it. And as we did it, engagement went up. By 2008, we were at 12 to 1, and by 2010, we went not only from the bottom, but we went to the top in terms of the Gallup and the Fortune 500. So we went from the bottom in the poorest, most dangerous city in the United States, falling off a cliff in terms of litigation and performance, to the top, an old economy canned soup company in Camden, New Jersey. If we can do it there, you can do it. You can do it wherever you are. Encouragingly, we shot the lights out with those top 350. We went from 2 to 1, which was the norm in 2002, to 77 to 1 by 2010. I would like to know who the 4 people were who weren't engaged. But it really didn't matter. And this is not, the bloom was off the rose here. This measurement was 7 years after we had made all the changes. So these people were in the thick of thin things. They were fully engaged in the enterprise at this point. 77 to 1. And we began to be recognized by all kinds of people for doing all kinds of good work. Now, I had to play my part in that. I did a couple things. I started managing by wandering around, which is hard for an introvert, but I did it anyway. And I had my assistant look for, every day we have a half hour free. We just don't know where it is, and we don't know how it's going to manifest itself. She would look for my half hour, and she would have my walking shoes by her desk, and she'd come and get me, say, you have your half hour now. Put on your pedometer at the time. We didn't have Fitbits. And go walking. You got to get your 10,000 steps in. And so I started just walking around, terrified that I'd actually have to talk to people. Eventually, I got used to it. But it was a good way for me to do it. We actually wrote a story about how I was going to be getting my 10,000 steps in, and if I didn't stop and talk to someone, it was because I was really trying to get my steps in, and so it let me off the hook. I didn't have to talk to them if I didn't want to. I started connecting with people there, and I started doing it in all the facilities. It was phenomenal the way it, in the fullness of time, changed the relationship with those people. Simple things, simple practice, profound impact. Thank you notes. My mother was right. I was not allowed to play with my Christmas gifts until I wrote my thank you notes, and I could fake it pretty well and get those notes out, and I'd say thanks, and they'd be gone. I discovered that all of our organizations are particularly gifted at being good critical thinking organizations and finding what's wrong. We're really good at that. But we don't celebrate what's right, which is usually 95% of what we're doing. And that our people needed to know we were paying attention. So I would start writing notes. I wrote 10 to 20 notes a day, 6 days a week for a decade. Just celebrating things that people were doing right. And they were handwritten because I wanted them to know it wasn't coming from some assistant who was just sending an email around. And they would go all over the world. When I was done, conservatively, we figured I'd written 30,000 notes to people. We only had 20,000 employees. In the fullness of time, I'd connected with everybody in a personal way, saying, we're paying attention. Thank you for doing your job, and thank you for doing it with distinction. You can do these things too. You can find practices that can make people feel that they're valued and inspire them to go one step beyond.